Hello everyone, and welcome to our tutorial here on noisejunkies.net. In this Cinema 4D tutorial, we'll take a look at how to create a blood flow like this one you're seeing. We're gonna actually be working with an animation, but this is just a picture to show you guys the texture that we're gonna be creating, the walls, and of course this is gonna be an animation with thinking particles. A bit about what we're gonna be learning. We're gonna be using xPresso, we're gonna be using some emitters, some accelerators, winds, so overall you're gonna be diving into thinking particles in xPresso and some other cool things. So just so you guys can see, there's a camera animation which goes through the flow of blood and then backs off a little bit and then twists a little bit and goes up. I think that's a really easy camera animation, but it's kind of cool to have a motion that opposes the motion of the red cells so that the scene is a little more interesting. The story can take a little bit of time, there's a lot of things to talk about, but I'll try to keep it under 10 minutes or so, and hopefully you guys can see through the whole thing. So let's start right away, and I'll go to File, New, and create a new project. Now, the first thing I actually want to do is to create a new project, different one, and this one will just work on making the red cell. Here you are in your blank project, and you should now create a sphere, and we're going to be working on our cell, our red cell. So I'll just make it smaller than usual and then make it editable by clicking on the basketball thing icon here, and here you have it. And the best thing I recommend you guys to do is to come here to this arrow setting here, not the one with the triangle but this one, because that way if you select the scale tool and you scale the y-axis, so it's actually the one with the triangle. If you get the scale tool and you scale down only in the y-axis, you can actually see you're gonna have something like this, and this is the shape we kind of want, elliptical. Another thing you have to do is to make a bump in here. So we're gonna do that by coming here to the arrow tool, or the selection arrow tool, and then going to the top view. The funny thing about this tool is that if you come here to the face polygon selection, you can just kind of go around and select all of them at the same time, and then you can come to the moving position and just push them down, and you're gonna see you have that desired hole. Now if you want to make this a little bigger, which I think we should, you can hold shift and then again go to the outer layer in here, just push down a little bit like that. Again, you decide how you want to do it, but basically that will be it. Then you can just go back to normal mode and make the material now. So for the material, we're going to create a new material and make this dark red like this. And then we're going to go to the bump and select the texture with noise. I'm not sure which one I used, but they all kind of work really well. So I'm going to select, let's see, cranial. Let's see how that works. And you can apply. Oh, also add a little bit of reflection, just so we can reflect the other red cells in just 20%, something like that. And if you render now, that's okay, but not cranial. Cranial may not be the best one we can use. In the original project, I actually used electric, so I can just go here to electric. So this is the one I use, electric. Okay, that's cool. Now you have your red cell. We can start working on the actual thinking particles emitter. So I'm going to click on this basketball icon here, or this world grid. I already said basketball before. So, and then those are the presets that come with Cinema 4D. Now you don't necessarily have to come here, but under thinking particles, you can go to emitter, and there's interesting options which I recommend using. And I am going to be using multi-shape emitter. Now what it does, if I hit play, well, you can't really see right now, but if I come to Objects, Thinking Particle, and Particle Geometry, and I add that particle geometry to the scene, you can actually see that those particles are different shapes of cubes and so on and so forth. But if you come inside the multi-shape emitter where you see those things, you can replace them by whatever you want. So we're gonna get and place our sphere, which is the red cells, and delete the rest. And by the way, if you would like to have like white cells as well and maybe an infection, you can of course just duplicate that sphere and make a new material for it so that you can have infection and all kinds of cells. I'm just gonna call this red cell. If you play now, you're gonna see there's a lot of particles, but the red cell is really big. So I would recommend scaling down, but you can see it actually will mess up our geometry. One thing you can do is to come to size, and instead of 100%, set this to 50%. And that way the red cells are going to be half of the size they were originally. In this case, you could even put 40% and that would be okay. Another thing you can change is the spread angle. I think 45 is a little too much. I would just put 20, and that way they're gonna be more directional, like you see right now. So now you have your thinking particles generator, but we need to affect those particles in many ways. Before, however, we start doing that, I'm going to create a vein. So I will just create a capsule and go to the top view once again and just try to make it enormous. So now you're inside the tube, and now you can create a camera that's going to be just where you are. Cameras, scene camera, camera. So now you can control the camera. And if you render right now, and not that great, but we're going to make it great. Another thing you can do right now is to create an environment, and that's actually a pretty good tip. Enable fog and set the fog to be red. So what I recommend now is to create a no object, and you can come right here, no object, and let's call this controller. You can command click on the controller in the Apple and control click in the Windows and add the Cinema 4D tag called xPresso, which we're all familiar with. And what you're going to be creating right now is your system of particles. So the first thing you have to do is to command click, new node, thinking particles, initiator, p pass. Now a lot of people don't really understand what this is all about, but this is supposed to be where all your actions are linked to. So make sure you create that so you can add your actions to it. And now we can start adding the nodes like thinking particle, wind for example, and it's gonna start to have an effect. So when you have something like wind, you have to get the blue output and link to the input. You're gonna have the green link and it's gonna work. But right now it's set to none, so I also have to create a no object for that. So let's go to no object. I'll call it wind, and I'll drag it to the wind. And now we should have the particles moving a little faster with the wind. Yes, you can see that. And if you don't believe it, you can always select the wind no object, rotate it that direction. When you hit play, the particles are all going there. But that doesn't really make sense because they're just, you know, going in the wall. But yeah, so the wind is now working, and that's great news for us. Another thing you can add is, let's see, the P bubble, and that's gonna make them bounce with an amplitude. So now that you add it, and you don't actually need a no object because it says particle in here. If it says none, then you should add a no object to it. Okay, so now if you click on the bubble, and I'll just readjust that a little bit here. By the way, if you lose it, or like if you accidentally zoom, you can just go to view and then 100% and you'll be back. Now, okay, so one thing you can do is to click on the bubble options and then set the amplitude to something else, because 100 is just too much, way too much. So maybe set this to 15 and the variation to 5%, and that way it's going to be more subtle. I even think that's a lot right there, so you could even make something like 7, I don't know. I also think they're just too clumped together, so what we can do is to once more come to the presets and now go to effectors, and both wind and the bubble is also an effector, but here you also have presets, and I would choose the accelerator. And you don't even have to link to xPresso, it's already here. If we play the animation now, we should already see that they're spreading apart more and they're accelerating much faster. In fact, a little faster than what I would like to be. So you can always change this to 300, and of course change how they're going to be accelerated through a line. Okay, so now we can start taking care of how the scene actually looks. But before, I should actually add a little camera animation. So in the first key, I'm going to get the rotation tool, and I'm just going to face it up like this and set a keyframe. And the last frame, I will just go down a bit And you know what would actually be interesting? To just move the camera. So you go to the top position and you move the camera to the front a little bit like this. That's gonna add an interesting dynamics to it if we play now. I think the scene is also a little dark, so in the environment we should actually make the fog a little brighter, like really bright red. 100% strength, environment strength, something like actually 50%, and that's really gonna add the atmosphere we're looking for, you know, of the blood flow. And for the tissue, I would actually work on that a little bit more. Instead of this one, instead of dense, I would put gaseous like this one and change the octaves to 3 instead of 5. That's just gonna add less change between black and white, less variations, which is gonna look a little more uniform. So that's getting a little closer to what we want. Really the only thing we need to be working now is how we're lighting the scene. So let's start working on that. Let's make a light. Let's add and see what happens by default. Well, the red cells are actually okay, but we're making the walls really bright, and I don't think we really want that. So there's some things we can work on. We can turn off the specular for this, and let's see if that makes any effect at all. And it does. It's much less brighter than it was before, so that helps us a little bit. And also in the color, you can make this a little darker still, like come together a little bit. And my advice for this is that we're too close to where they're actually emitting the particles from, so naturally they're all close together, but if you look right here, they're all spread apart, and that's because we have the spread angle of 20, but it takes a while to reach that point. So what I would do is to just push the capsule a bit to the front and consequently move the camera also. Then we should get the particles to be a little more spread apart. This looks much better with depth of field on, so I recommend you guys check this tutorial by my friend, the 696 baby. He makes a lot of Cinema 4D tutorials, great channel, and he has a cool depth of field tutorial that's not very long, so you guys should probably watch it and get a sense of how you can do depth of field so it looks a little bit better. Of course, also check noisejunkies.net. You'll know in advance the tutorials I'll be making. You can request, you can comment on the outcomes of certain tutorials, and you can see them all categorized in here very nicely. You can also request the project files, and if you ask close enough to the release date, I might have it. So lots of reasons to visit this, and why aren't you doing it exactly?